We'll start where we left off. In the previous video, we were looking at creating a word list from a dictionary file that we found on the Mr. Robot VM. And we filtered that list down, removing all duplicates, making sure every entry is unique, and it also sorted it out into alphabetical order. So the resulting file we've called filtered.tx, and that was the output or the result that came from the fsociety.dictionary file that we have here. So now we need to use the information somehow to actually break into the WordPress login screen. So let's remind ourselves what that actually looks like. So we have a login screen here, which asks for a username and a password. And if I try the standard admin, okay. So here we can see if that by typing admin, it's actually come up with an error message, invalid username, rather than invalid credentials, which suggests that if we got the right username, the error message hopefully would change to invalid password, and then effectively by a series of eliminations and constant brute force, we'll eventually get to a point at which we can match the username to a given password. So this is one of the vulnerabilities that this particular logging screen poses. So we're going to use this to effectively gain entry into this work process admin section. So in order to do this, if I first of all minimize this screen for the moment, what I want to do is, I know that the star of the Mr. Robot series was called Elliot. And what I want to do is I want to find out if Elliot is in the list, the filtered list that we've created previously. So to do so easily, I'm actually going to use the grep command, and I'm actually going to look for the name Elliot, and I'm going to give it the list. And hopefully, what I'm hoping to see is that there is Elliot in this list. And I've wrote reg rather than grep. And there we go. We can see that there are two words in the list with the characters Elliot. We can even try this with a capital E. And you can see that there's even more words. So Elliot features quite a lot in one way or another within this word list file. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the login page, and I'm actually going to try the name Elliot. And let's see, I'll just type Elliot again here, and we'll see what we get. And this time the error message has now changed, and it's now saying that the password you've entered for the username Elliot is correct. So inadvertently, we've actually confirmed that there is a user in this system, in this login system, with the name Elliot. And that in itself is a vulnerability. So how do we now that we know the user, how do we find out the actual password for this user on this WordPress system? So we can use a program which was called WPSCAN. So WordScan is a command line interface tool It's freely available for non-commercial use, and it's a security scanner for WordPress files, so we can actually use it for a number of different things to check vulnerabilities within WordPress websites. It has a database of nearly 40,000 WordPress vulnerabilities, and we can actually use this tool to actually brute force the login on the WordPress website. So if I just switch back to my computer for a moment, and I'm just going to clear the screen. So if I want to use the WordPress scan, and you can see I have tried this out previously. What I can do here is I can use the WordPress scan utility. It has to have some form of URL. In other words, it needs to be pointed to a website. And as you can see here, we're using HTTP. I'm pointing it to our Mr. Robot web server, and I'm using the PHP file or the WP-login file to actually break in. What I want to do here is for the username, I know that the name is Elliot, so I already have the username. And what I need to know is what the password is. So -u is the username and -p is the password. Notice that they're capital letters and not lowercase. When I first tried this out, typically commands are written as lowercase. But in this instance, if you was to do a lowercase u and p, they actually do other things, if anything at all. So you have to use -u as a capital letter and -p as a capital letter P for this to work. I've given it the username, so we know the username because we've tried that and that already works. So now I'm just giving it a list of potential passwords. And even though the username, I know the username is in this list, I'm hopeful that the password is also in this list as well. I could have in the beginning have, if I didn't know the username, I could have done something like this. And it would have gone through the list, found the username and the password, but this would have taken an awfully long time because it would have first found the username and then it would run the test again just to see if it could match the password. And with the file the size that it is, it would have taken a considerable amount of time. But we've managed to shorten that time slightly by having the information that Elliot is actually the username. So all we need to do is run this test to find the password. So if I press enter here, it's going to start to run a test against the website, looking for all the vulnerabilities that it can find. But one of the vulnerabilities that it's also going to be looking for is whether or not, based on the username, can it also find the password. Okay, so the search is finally finished. And as you can see on screen, it's given us a report of the vulnerabilities that it has found. If I was to scroll up on this screen, you can actually see here that it actually found a valid combination between the name Elliot as the user and the password ER280652. So if I was to copy that, and now if I go back to the login page and I paste that as the password, there we go. We've now got access to the Mr. Robot website using the WordPress login. So we've successfully used WordPress Scanner to actually go through all possibilities and combination. So it's been constantly hitting the particular website. Now, obviously, I've not really changed any settings for this, and you could have systems in place to detect this sort of attack. The way that I would normally do this in the wild would be to really make them very slow, so very random. In other words, not a successive, brute force attack against the login. It would try combinations over a longer period of time until it eventually got one that worked, and hopefully not trying to trigger the intrusion detection system or the firewall of the web server. However, for the benefit of this demonstration, you can see that that has worked successfully. So we started from not knowing the username to finding out what the username or guessing what the username could be. But then by using the WordPress scan utility, we've then been able to brute force and effectively find the password for this particular web server. So I'm going to stop the video here and I'll speak to you in the next one.